Hari Om, Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Namaskara to all. Sadashiva Samharambham, Shankaracharya Madhyamam, Asmadacharya Paryantam, Vande Guru-Parampara. Shubhodaya. This is your host Soumya today. I extend a warm welcome to everyone to yet another session from Indica Moksha on the account of Global Festival of Oneness. This is a month-long festival on Adi Shankaracharya Bhagavadpada, covering various aspects and topics of Advaita Vedanta. Today we have Ramesh Venkatraman, who will be talking on Shankara Charitham, a modern retelling. A brief introduction on Ramesh. Ramesh Venkatraman presently works as a director, Vivekananda Institute of Leadership Development, and faculty at the Vivekananda Institute of Indian Studies. He had a 2-decade stint in the corporate world, where he held strategic and leadership positions across the domains of sales, marketing, product management, capacity building, consulting. Ramesh has been engaged in various development sectors for over 5 years. Ramesh is also deeply interested in understanding, practicing, and disseminating the dharmic cultural heritage of Bharat. Writing is a passion for him, and he writes regularly on a range of topics spanning culture, dharma, and management. He is in the process of authoring two books. First one is The Story of Vishnu Sahasranama from Bhishma's Reflection, and the second one is Shankara Charitham, a modern retelling. This is actually a 4-lecture series on Shankara Charitham by him, and today is the 3rd session. Ramesh, you can speak for 50 minutes, and the last 10 minutes we shall hold for question and answers. That will be the format we shall follow. Now over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sama. And thanks also to Nitin and Indica Moksha, and also to the organization, my own organization. Kind of encouraged me in all of these messages. Before I actually start, one of the approach that I've taken in the first 2 sessions has not been to go in a linear fashion telling the story of Shankaracharya. Because the format that I've been following, even in the writing of this story, is not linear. One of the and it comes from this fundamental concept of the cyclical nature of dharma, of life itself, and therefore, for those who have been following the chapters that have already been published, there are 15 chapters that have been published, and they are available on a website. And what happens? So when I say cyclical, what I do is even in the approach to the writing of the story, it goes back and forth. There are flash forwards and there are flashbacks. The stories of the story, because very often we look at Shankara Charitham and think that it's when Shankara is made the hero, all of the other subtexts, the subplots, the layers within the layers, the stories within the stories, the smaller anecdotes, and the reflections that are possible in the whole process of storytelling get lost in the process. And therefore, what I will do is if for those who have followed, and I know that some of them have followed some of the chapters. So you will have, for example, Shankara's childhood. Then we will flash back into several years where we go into Patanjali's Charitham. Because the lineage of the Shankara actually begins from Patanjali, then Gaudapada, then Govindapada. And then the entire lineage and it is Govindapada, like we spoke about in the earlier session, where the human gurus are first acknowledged. Till that time, and the Shankaracharya lineage takes Krishna Paramatma as the Paramaguru, and through him Vyasa, then the whole lineage comes. And Shukracharya also comes in between, where he's the one who trained Gauranga. So there'll be a lot of flashback and flash forward, and this is a kind of storytelling that I seem to relate to. And I also want to, for example, if you look at, and in episode 1, we looked at what are all the texts that we can go to as a reference for Shankaracharya. We looked at the entire corpus of available literature, and it's not just the Madhaviya Shankara Vijay. We also saw that the Madhaviya Shankara Vijay itself is, in one sense, a compilation. It draws from several texts and all that. So in that sense, and like we said, I will look at so even in this storytelling, I'm looking at multiple episodes, and they are at random. And the purpose of the randomness is also to ensure that people actually go and read about it rather than only listen to a kind of a Katha Kalakshepa kind of a linear progression. It's not what I looked at. In the last session, or rather the last episode, or however we want to call it, we stopped at a place where, for example, Govinda Bhagavad. Now, Gaudapada has incurred a curse from Patanjali Maharishi while learning the Mahabhashyam from him. And because of that curse, for several years, and upwards of, say, hundreds of years, he lives the life of a Brahma Rakshasa. And as per the dharma of the Brahma Rakshasa, he feeds on people, humans, he feeds on their souls. He sits on this people tree, on large banyan people tree. He accosts people who cross. This is the junction of, as per the story, this is the junction of Dravida Desha and Gauda Desha. In the ancient times, you had two divisions. Below the Vindhyas was Dravida Desha, above the Vindhyas was the Gauda Desha. He sits there, and people who are crossing over, crossing over from the north to the south, or the north, the entire north, and I include the east and west, and people who are moving in from the south to the north. This was the junction point. He sat there. And because the only way he can get out of this curse is if he finds somebody who can answer all those, answer a set of questions that he poses. We don't know what these questions are, actually. So it's just mentioned in all of the, literature corpus that we can refer to, that he asked a set of questions to test the traveler. And so with the moment he sees this Govindapada, who is known as Chandragupta Sharma, he realizes that here is somebody who shines with the light of Brahma Tej. So he accosts him and asks all the questions, and Govinda, he who will become Govindapada later, answers all of the questions, and therefore the Brahma Rakshasa takes Chandragupta Sharma as his disciple. They climb up the people tree, and then the Brahma Rakshasa starts to put conditions. Now the Brahma Rakshasa, as in Gaudapada, and he says, and it's very similar to how the conditions that like Ganesha says when Ganapati becomes the scribe of the Mahabharata, he also says, I won't take I won't take breaks while writing, all of those. Yes. Similarly, here it's the reverse. He says, I will speak continuously, and you can't take breaks. You have to keep writing. And so for 9 days and 9 nights, he writes. The boy realizes that he doesn't have anything to write on. Therefore, he makes cuts in his own body, tips, shapes a people twig into a stylus, plucks out people leaves, and he starts to write. And we also saw that, he spends some time, he walks all the way from there to Ujjain, and on the way he lies down on a stone bench near in front of the house of a merchant. And when he sits there, he almost faints because of the loss of blood, the fatigue of having not slept for 9 days and 9 nights, and hardly haven't eaten anything. And that is when, the daughter of that merchant nurses him back to health. And even as she nurses him to health, she's a trained Ayurvedic physician. He also, she falls in love with him. And, interestingly, Chandragupta Sharma, who's to become Govinda Bhagavadpada, becomes, and ends up marrying 4 women from the 4 Varnas. This is the story. He marries this merchant, which would be the Vaishya. Then he marries the daughter of the king, who is a Kshatriya, the daughter of the minister to the king, Brahmana, and then also he marries another girl from the 4th Varna, has 4 children who are all taught the Mahabhashyam, and mandated to explain the Mahabhashyam to everyone. And that is when he leaves the place, goes to Badrikashrama, where he knows that Gaudapada, who has trained under, Gaudapada has lost his Brahmaraksha form. He has become a realized saint. He has studied under Shankaracharya. And so, but interestingly, there is one episode which is, this Mahabhashyam that we have is called often, sometimes very, very, in some places, they refer to as the Ajabakshita Bhashyam. Ajabakshita meaning, as soon as Chandragupta Sharma, who is going the Bhagavadpada, climbs down from the tree, he's so tired and exhausted that he lies down there and sleeps. And the sack of leaves that he has, loosely tied, he keeps it on his side. And there is a goat, that is the Aja, which comes and eats up a portion of the leaves. By the time he realizes he has lost so much of his commentary, so much effort, writing it in blood and all of that is gone. So he bundles of whatever is left. So what we have today of the Mahabhashyam is Ajabakshita Bhashyam, that which is left over after the goat had made a meal of it. That is, an episode which is very rarely discussed, but I felt that it's a very, very important kind of intervention and something, that message that needs to come out. That is it. Meanwhile, what is happening is the Gaudapada tells Govinda Bhagavadpada that sometime in the future, there will be an avatar of Shiva who will become your disciple. Therefore, you must make yourself ready, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, to be able to receive this kind of an avatar who will come. He will be an absolute avatar. He will be a sannyasa. It will be one of those rare sannyasa avatars. He will not go through any of the varnashrama dharma. He will straight away, adopt the sannyasa. And he will come in search of you. And this meeting point, Gaudapada also mentions, will be on the near Narmada, near the Omkareshwara. That's what it's. For a long time, Govinda Bhagavadpada spends time in his own Atmanishta. He's already attained Brahma Vidya, and he does. But then he realizes intuitively through his, Jnana Drishti, that the time has come and he needs to prepare. I mean, Gaudapada has clearly told him he has to prepare for receiving this avatar. So he makes the travel. He travels all the way from Badrinath, which is the Badrikashram, to this place in what we know is present day Khandwa district of Madhya Pradesh. So from Badrinath, this would have been a travel, would have been a walk of about 1,545 kilometers. And this, this is what interestingly Google Maps says. So you don't know how much more difficult. So today, it will be calculating it based on what the highways are between Badrinath and Omkareshwar in Khandwa of Madhya Pradesh. But then it must have been either much longer and much, and definitely much more difficult. So Govinda Bhagavadpada makes that walk. Just look at the to meet with the avatar of Shiva, and he traverses 1,545 kilometers by foot. So it's from the north of India right up to central West India, west and central. And Shankara makes that long trek. He's probably 9 years old when he takes the ashrama. Just look at this whole thing, and he makes that long trek from Kaladi right up to Omkar. So what were the circumstances? What made Shankara realize that he needed to go here? Is something that is something that perhaps we can reflect on. Perhaps something that we can even think about. What are these moments in history that make these things possible? This distance from Kaladi, which is in near Angamali in Kerala, to right up to Ukkare, to Khandwa district of Madhya Pradesh in Omkareshwar, is roughly about 1,800 kilometers, 1,800 kilometers, and Shankara makes that walk. So that is why in the chapter I say it is the walk of destiny. But both of them are not walking at the same time. Govinda Bhagavadpada comes much, much earlier because Gaudapada has clearly told him that in order to be able to receive the power of this avatara, you must prepare yourself. So he's come early. He comes early, spends some time on the banks of the Narmada, and then retires into a cave on Omkareshwar. The people around there hardly see him. This is a dark cave where they say that even his breathing was not something that people could hear. He was in that state of ultimate samadhi within, preparing himself for receiving the Shankara avatar. Shankara, and in the earlier episode we also saw that Shankara is none other than Shambhu, and Shambhu is essentially Dakshinamurti himself. So it is the same Dakshinamurti who sat under the tree and taught people through Mauna, has now taken the avatar of Shankara and in a sense has broken the Maunam, has broken Mauna and will write, speak, and do all of those things. So that is why Shambhu and Shankara, are in that sense, they occur together in the Rudram, but they are absolute opposites or oxymorons, to use an English grammatical term, in the sense that Shambhu is the epitome of Mauna or silence, and Shankara is the great philosopher who indulges in all these debates across the country, who also writes extensively commentaries along that in a lifespan that is so very short to achieve. So Shankara makes that. And since we have also talked about lifespan, I'll make a little segue here and also talk about it. Now, when Shivaguru, the father of Shankara, is both Shivaguru and Aryamba are a little old, and they do not have children. They desperately want children, but they don't have. And they're also worried about the fact that they are not getting any younger. That is when they are told that if they worship at the Vadakanathan temple, which is in Thrissur, Kaladi to Thrissur is roughly about 50 kilometers at the most. So if they worship at the Vadakanathan temple, during the time when they have, today the Vadakanathan temple is a huge temple. It's called Round South in Thrissur. You have the Paramekavu temple on the other side. Vadakanathan. The Puram festival happens on the grounds of the Vadakanathan on that. But by all accounts, a temple during Shivaguru's time only existed as something that is not really a temple, but it is something, but definitely a Shivalingam existed. And we know that the Shivalingam was established by Parashurama himself. So that is where they pray. They do the Mandala Vratam, which is about 41 days. They do the Mandala Vratam, both of them. Worship at the Vadakanathan temple in Thrissur and walk back to Kaladi. After they have come back to Kaladi, finish their Mandala Vratam, and they have conducted a puja and they have fed all the people there and all of that. Shiva appears in a dream to Shiva. And Shiva says, that there is one interesting aspect. Vishnu repeatedly comes. He makes all the avatars, primarily because he's the organizer. I mean, Vishnu is closely attached to Bhuma, Prithvi, and therefore he keeps coming in order to protect Dharma and also to protect Earth, protect Bhumi, Bhuma or Bhumi or Prithvi. Shiva is not. Shiva is the one who has burnt up all his desires, applied it on his body and sits in the pristine heights of Kailash. But he's made the decision to take this avatara because he believes that in this age and time, it is the sannyasa avatara which will be able to re-establish Dharma. So so that is why he says he will not only talk the talk but also walk the talk. He will show by example. He will lead by example. That is the purpose of the Shankara. Now, Shiva appears in a dream to Shivaguru and gives him an option. Says, I myself shall be born in the womb of Aryamba. Aryamba is Shivaguru's But here is an choice, and you are free to make this choice. One, you can either have a child that will not become very famous or will not be supremely intelligent and all of that, but will have a long life. Or alternatively, you could have a child who would have an extremely reduced lifespan, but would be so brilliant that the whole world will not only know about him, but will remember him for eternity. And Shiva Guru, without a blink, without a moment's chooses the latter, which is he'll have a child who would be the very epitome of brilliance, who would be the savior of Dharma, who would be the expounder of Dharma, who would write some of the most pristine commentaries on the books. And he said, I will choose this. Now, by all accounts, apparently, the lifespan at that time was only 8. That was the lifespan that was offered to Shankara. And which is why you will see the tremendous progression. They say by the age of 3, his guru did not know what else they could teach him. And Shivaguru himself passes away when Shankara is hardly 2 years old. And Aryamba it is Aryamba who enrolls him into the Gurukula. It is Aryamba who brings him up. It is Aryamba who does his Upanayanam ceremony and all of this. But there is an incident that is reported where Shankara, the young boy, is met by all the Digvijayams talk about meeting a delegation of rishis, which was led by Agastya himself. There are people who will debate saying, how did Agastya live in this age when Shankara is all that? I'm not even going into those. There could be multiple reasons for, but we know that Agastya. So Agastya meets with him. And then looking at the boy, there is a discussion that happens with the delegation of rishis. During the discussion, they are so happy, so pleased with the brilliance of this boy that Agastya says, this is not somebody who should go away so early. They know through their, intuitive drishti that this boy is not going to live very long. And he's almost at the end of his lifespan. And therefore they say, so he says, I will double your lifespan, which means 16. So from 8 becomes 16. So his lifespan gets doubled. Sannyasa happens at about 9 years of age. So sannyasa happens at about 9 years of age when, and in that sense, and in the last episode I mentioned, taking sannyasa is almost, is not very dissimilar from death itself, because you have to die, in the sense you must give up everything that you thought was real, everything that was part of your earlier life to move into something called sannyasa. That is, you burn all bridges, to use modern parlance. You burn all bridges and become sannyasa. So look at how dharma plays out. Destiny meant that he should die at 8. So in that sense, he actually dies. Though Agastya, has extended his lifespan by another 8 years, having doubled it. He actually dies because he takes up sannyasa at roughly about 8 to 9. And then he does the walk. So he's at roughly about 16 years old. So now he's made the walk, and as we know, he comes up at the and he knows unerringly that he needs to be here. He comes close, asks people, where is Govindapada's guha, or the cave, and then they point to a place where he is, and he recognizes this cave because there is a deer skin hanging on the on the path leading up to it, and there are also certain marks. There is dandam that is there, and all of this. So he walks up to the cave, circumambulates that little hillock where the cave is, and then he stands in front of the guha. And that is when Shankara, chants and he, with folded hands, he requests Govinda Bhagavadpada to accept him as his disciple. And Govinda Bhagavadpada asks him, who are you, my child? Introduce yourself to me. And that is the moment when Shankara, extemporaneously creates the Dashashloki, which is also known as the Nirvana Dashakam. There he says, each set of each stanza ends with Tadeko Vasishtha Shiva Kevalo. That I am nothing but that very Shiva. I am not the body. I am not the physical. I am not the ashramas that I represent. I am beyond the Varnashrama, beyond the three states of existence, beyond even Turiya, he says. I am all of those things, and therefore I am that. So each and this is a pattern that you will see across several of Shankara's works, where he will pick up one sentence or one line and he will hit on it. For example, you will see it even in the Dwadash Manjarika, which is more popularly known as the Bhajagovind. He will there will be a repetition of certain lines. So that is when he once the moment he chants the Dashashloki, using the Dashashloki or the Nirvana Dashakam to introduce himself. They say for the first time, Govinda Bhagavadpada is also seen as an avatar of Adi Sesha. Therefore, Adi Sesha is symbolically representative of eternal time. The coils of Adi Sesha, the fact that Vishnu sleeps on Adi Sesha, is symbolically to represent, is simply in one sense symbolically represents that Vishnu is the master of time, of Kala. And since Adi Sesha is the master of Kala, each of his folds they say each fold represents is a multiverse in itself, not even a universe. And therefore, Govinda Bhagavadpada is an Amsha Avatara of this Adi Sesha. And that is why, and Adi Sesha is Sthira and Mauna. That is why, people didn't know if he was even breathing inside or if there was what sort of a being lived with. And for the first time, they say they heard, breathing. And then at that moment, a pair of feet actually come out of the cave. That is Govinda Bhagavadpada. It could be allegorical, it could be anecdotal, but a pair of feet emerge out of the mouth of the cave. And Shankara holds on to it, and and literally and figuratively, speaking, Shankara gets pulled into the cave and into the folds of Govinda Bhagavad. In the sense, Govinda Bhagavadpada, who had never accepted any disciples for hundreds and hundreds of years. They say that he was living here, preparing himself for this. The moment Shankara spoke of introduced himself with Shiva Kevaloham, he knew that this is the person that his Guru Gaudapada had mentioned. Therefore, Shankara goes in and he spends quite some time and we think and since he was a very fast learner, he probably spent some time learning, and that is when and after Govinda Bhagavadpada has completed the instructions that he had, and later Shankara also writes in one of the Karikas of Govinda Bhagavad, and then he tells them that it is time for you to go on your way. Our assumption is roughly, Shankara is probably 10 years, 11 years, or probably even closer to that. And that is where he starts writing several of his commentaries. He starts getting disciples and other things. And he's getting closer and closer to that point when the next key milestone happens. That is the age of 16. Now, we saw that Agastya said that he would that his life has been only doubled, right, from 8 to 16. So 16 would mean that Shankara would pass away. And there are several instances, several stories again built into this where, you get to know how his life once again got extended. Shankara perhaps intuitively knew that he didn't have many years to live. So what he decides to do is that he says that he must he wants to meet with Kumarila Bhatta. Now, Kumarila Bhatta is the master of Purva Mimamsa and somebody who, was very, very clear about, who spoke about the ritualistic nature and the importance of the Vedas. Kumarila Bhatta himself is spoken of and is accepted as a Amsha avatar of Skanda, that is Guha or Subramanya. And in one of in the first episode, I did speak about how Kumarila Bhatta defeats the Buddhists. He goes to the court of Sudanvan. There is and in that court he realizes that he is not able to draw them into a debate or a discussion, and therefore he provokes them. And anybody who wants to listen to that story can go to part 1 of this series. So, but Shankara wants to now. Shankara has already written the commentary on the Vedanta as the pristine truth, and therefore he wants to share this. But he has tremendous respect for Kumarila, and he wants to meet with him. So Shankara has just before he can meet with Kumarila, he comes to Prayag, and at the Triveni Sangam, he bathes at the Triveni Sangam, and that is when he gets the information that Kumarila Bhatta has decided to take his own life. There are two, take his own life as in, and that Kumarila Bhatta is already is going to enter into fire, Agni, and very interesting because Skanda himself is known as Subramanya is known as Agni, as the symbolic of Agni himself, and he's going to be entering into this. So there is a great mound of rice husk that is created. It's a slow burning death that he has invited on himself. You can't call it death; it is samadhi, because all accounts speak of how even when the fire was reaching right up and over Kumarila's head, there was this beautiful smile that was playing on his face, and Kumarila was in a state of absolute samadhi, ecstatic samadhi that he was, even as the rice husk was slowly melting his very skin and bone and muscles. Now, so Shankara gets this information and he says, I must rush to Kumarila Bhatta. I must meet him before he takes his samadhi. And therefore, Shankara makes that long journey. And there he meets him and kind of shares his commentary. Kumarila is Skanda. Just look at the beauty. Now, in the sense in one sense, Subramanya is meeting with Shiva himself in more than one sense, and also as a brilliant allegory of how this is there. There is the story where Subramanya is called the Swaminatha Swami, because he's Swaminatha Swami because he taught the secret of the Pranava to Shiva himself. The son who taught the father, and here the father is now again, the roles are kind of reversed here again. And Kumari and Skanda himself gladly accepts the role of Kumarila, because in the Shiva, when he is petitioned by again in the first episode, petitioned by all the devas, and devas requesting that he take the avatara, he says, before I take the avatara, my son Subramanya will prepare the ground. He will prepare the ground and then I shall go. And Kumarila has prepared the ground because he's established pristine nature of the Vedas. He's successfully established that. And he has also created somebody who will be, who was known, who was the most famous disciple. Kumarila, and interestingly, that most famous disciple is Mandana Mishra. We'll come to that again. Mandana Mishra is the person who, and Mandana Mishra is the greatest proponent of the Vedas, and he's Kumarila's disciple. Shankara reaches Kumarila's place, but by the time he reaches, he's already in the midst of the rice husk. The flames are already rising, and Shankara himself notes how calm and peaceful and in a state of ecstatic samadhi that Kumarila is. But when he sees Shankara, Kumarila acknowledges that Shankara is Shiva himself has come. And he says so. And he says, I'm so pleased, he says, that you could come. And I had this opportunity to meet with you before I entered into Samadhi. Shankara discusses the Vedantic philosophy. And Kumarila requests that before he gets into Samadhi, he must, that is, Shankara must teach him the secret of Vedanta and the secret of attaining Brahma Vidya. And then there is the dialogue between Kumarila and Shankara. And it is said that when this supreme secret, that the great dualist, Kumarila, accepts the Advaitic or Vedantic standpoint of Shankara in that this way. And Kumarila also makes a very interesting suggestion before he goes into Samadhi, where he says, you must now in Mahishamati. Mahishamati is where, Mandana Mishra is. We also discussed Mandana Mishra's story and how he became Mandana Mishra. In episode 2, I think, where we spoke about how Mandana Mishra and Bharati, who later becomes Ubhaya Bharati, have this long distance love and all in love. And Mandana Mishra is often referred to as an Amsha avatar of Brahma, and Bharati as an Amsha avatar of Saraswati. So there also, this brilliant meeting of Veda and Veda Vani also is happening there. So he says that you must meet with Mandana Mishra. When you meet with Mandana Mishra, because he is now and Kumarila even says, Mandana is even better than me. He has surpassed me in the knowledge of the Vedas, in practice of the Vedas, in establishing the primacy of the Vedas. And therefore, if you want the pristine knowledge of Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta to be established, there is no other way but for you to engage Mandana Mishra in a debate. Have Bharati, that is Ubhaya Bharati, as the umpire who will decide, and she will be absolutely impartial, he says. She herself is a scholar par excellence, and she will stand as the umpire. And the moment you cross that barrier, because Mandana Mishra, if Mandana Mishra is converted, to use that word which is very fashionable nowadays, then your job is done, because he then there is no end to how far your teachings would reach. And that is how Shankara gets to meet, decides that he must debate with, and then he travels to Mahishmati. There is this. They say that the Digvijayam says that he traveled through the sky. Some people might say it is hagiographic again. But when Shankara reaches the place, he asks a group of girls who are walking down the road, and with the idea of fetching water for Mandana Mishra's. Where is Mandana Mishra? They look at him and say, they are so impressed by Shankara's form, his brilliant form. They say, go to that house where even the parrots, are engaged in a debate where are discussing the Vedas with one another. It's very easy to find Mandana's house, because that is how it is, and it is the biggest house in this whole area, because and there even the caged parrots are. Again, it's a fantastic allegory, caged parrots being, Shankara defeats Mandana, and the parrots who only know this much of it are suddenly released and kind of know the pristine philosophy. Vedanta is one way of looking at it. It's a very allegorical kind of. And then, interestingly, just as Kumarila Bhatta provokes, the Buddhists into that debate right at the beginning when he prepares the ground for Shankara. Shankara also goes at a time, and maybe it is well planned, goes at a time when, Mandana Mishra is in the midst of doing a large puja. There are several rishis and Brahmins, all of those Brahmanas were all sitting there for the meeting. And the gate is closed, right? The gate is closed. It doesn't allow anybody, there is no entry to Brahmishra. Shankara scales the wall. He just clambers over the wall. He and his disciples clamber over the wall and gate crash this Mandana Mishra's party. They gate crash, enter into Mandana Mishra's house, and Mandana Mishra is absolutely, angered by it, and it works to Shankara's advantage. Because one of the ways in which Ubhaya Bharati decides that it is Shankara who was won, because it was a huge debate that goes on and on and on and on. And in the sense that Ubhaya Bharati, after even Mandana is defeated, no, she puts a garland of flowers on both of their necks and says, I would hate to be an umpire who would want to decide that this person is better than the other person. And there are two ways in which she approaches that. She says, the person on whose neck the flowers first start to, turn brown and become a little decayed is the person who loses, right? Which is an indicator, because one of the fundamental requirements of debate in those days was that both parties retain equanimity, debate in an atmosphere that is calm, peaceful. They can provoke, they will say all sorts of things, because tarka meant that they will argue, they will do all sorts of, because some of the words that they use and all of that is in today's social media world, people would be blocking one another if you look at the kind of debate that goes on. There are two ways in which Ubhaya Bharati, being so brilliant, arrives at the decision. One, as the debate goes on, she finds that Mandana Mishra is slowly, after close to a month, is slowly getting angrier and angrier, which means that the heat in his body is gradually going up. He's starting to sweat, and therefore the flowers, she says, are starting to go bad. Whereas in Shankara's they remain. And in a way that is so very elegant, she says, till that day, at multiple times during the debate, she says, she invites Mandana Mishra to come and eat, to have his food. She says, because in those days, the husband was fed first and then the wife ate. So when she addresses Mandana Mishra, she says, please come and have your food. That is how a grihastha is addressed. But when she addresses Shankara, she keeps saying, she says, on every day she says this, she says, please come and accept Bhiksha. Because sannyasi has to accept Bhiksha. So she says, let me offer you Bhiksha. The day she decides that Mandana Mishra, her own husband, has lost, and the rule or the wager was that the person who lost would accept the other person's way of, which means that if Mandana Mishra lost, he would would take sannyas ashram. If Shankara lost, he would become a grahastha, or accept that Mandana's philosophy was right. So on the day she realizes that her husband has lost, she says, would both of you come and accept Bhiksha? It's a brilliant and elegant way of saying that her husband has lost without making him feel bad, and Shankara has lost. Till that day, she says, come have food, when she addresses Mandana. But she says, she asks Shankara to accept Bhiksha. But on that Bhiksha, On that day, she says, both of you should have fiction. Before I start, speak another 3 or 4 minutes, I'll add one more. There is also another incident closely aligned with Kumarila Bhatta's episode. In that episode, the Digvijayams speak of Shankara having a meeting with Vyasadeva. And if people have any confusion, the Digvijayam is very clear that it's the same Vyasa who is the compiler of the Veda, who wrote the Brahma Sutram and also the Mahabharata. It's the same Vyasa. And they make it absolutely clear. So again, people might say, how is it possible? Yeah, that's it. Now, when Shankara meets with Vyasa, Shankara's, he's is very, very clear. He says, and the episode itself is fantastic. Shankara is with his disciples, probably close to 16 years of age, and which means that he's close to the end of his life as after it was doubled by Agastya. So during his discourse, he's discoursing on the I think the Brahma Sutra Bhashyam. He's written the Brahma Sutra Bhashyam. Vyasa comes in the form of a Brahman and says, I have points of disagreement with whatever you're speaking. I've been listening to what you've been saying, teaching it. I have points of disagreement. And Shankara and Vyasa in the disguise of this Brahman starts, they start it's a long debate, and Shankara's disciples themselves are amazed at the knowledge that this Brahmana has and how he's able to hold this argument with Shankara. It says, how is this even possible? Why is that? How is this Brahmana being able to match Shankara word for word, argument for argument, sentence for sentence? And where does this knowledge? He looks like an ordinary Brahman. That is when one of them realizes perhaps there is more to it than this. And he indicates to Shankara that maybe this is somebody else. Maybe this is, and he says maybe it is Narayana himself who's come here. And that is when, kind of Shankara realizes that it is. And Veda Vyasa is anyway known as is an avatar of Vishnu himself. And that is when he realizes that this Vishnu himself who has come, and that's why they're in this argument, and and it's a stalemate all along. They're not moving forward. And that is when Shankara, being Shankara, immediately says, I'm sorry I even got into an argument. Take a look at my Bhashyam on your own Brahma Sutra, on the aphorisms of the Brahma Sutra, and then you decide if this is acceptable. If it is acceptable, I go forward with it. Otherwise, I am willing to. That is when Vyasa says, no. This debate was only an opportunity for me to partake in this rare event where Shiva himself has come on earth as Shankara, and therefore that is why I got into this debate. And therefore he says, this Brahma Sutra Bhashyam is absolutely perfect, and I accept it in full. Shankara then says, Shankara, like I said, already knows that he's close to the end of his life. It's close to 16 years of age. And he says, there's nothing more that I want. I have met with you. I have met with Vyasa. I have only one wish. This happens just before, Kumarila's incident. And he says, I have just one wish. I want to meet with Kumarila Bhatta, and then I have written most of the commentaries. I have done most of what I wanted to do, and I no longer am interested. I want to go into Samadhi and end my life. That is when Vyasa looks deeply into Shankara's eyes and says, child, I know that you want to go back to where you came from, which is because he's Shiva. Shiva is, needs to go from. But there is much more that you need to do. And I think extending your life is the way to go. And therefore he says, that is Vyasa, double your life. So 16 becomes 32. And that is how, in two multiples, in twice, it so happens that Agastya doubles his life from 8 to 16, and 16 becomes 32 by Vyasa. And we all know that at the age of 32, Shankara attained Samadhi. And they also say that by the age of 29, he had become a Mauna Muni. He had written all his commentaries, he had finished. His Digvijayam had been completed, and he became an absolute Mauna Muni for the last 3 years. Because he said there was nothing that I need to talk. I have done all the talking, and then Shankara had once again become Shambhu. That is what it says. So the Shambhu that had become Shankara once again became Shambhu, the source from which this avatar had. So I think I was asked to stop at 7:50. I extended it by a minute. Stop here. I'm willing to get into the questions.
Thank you, Ramesh. It was really nice. Audiences, if you have any questions, please put forth. So, in meanwhile, I have my own question here. When you say argument and between Mandala Mishra and Shankaracharya, so what kind of topics were covered?
There is very brief mention of what all they covered, but essentially it's about the topics discussed. Initially, what happened with Mandana Mishra is not all keen on getting into an argument with Shankara, because I think intuitively he also knew that this was a moment when something important was going to. Initially, he starts with, for example, Mandana Mishra looks at people who take up sannyasa ashrama itself with disdain. That's how the says. Says, who is this fellow without a shika and without a shika and his head shaved? Because he believes that Banda shika and without a shika, there's absolutely zero respect. That is what the Vedas says, and he's not a believer in the sannyasa ashrama itself. It says Grahastha ashrama is the greatest of the ashrama. So it actually begins with that. It begins with this that what is. So when he makes this, so he starts by absolutely insulting Shankara. He says, I don't speak to people with shaven heads and begging bowls. So just he says how the question he asks is how much are you shaved? And Shankara says up to the neck. That kind of repartee is what it starts with. And then they go deeper and deeper and deeper into philosophy, where Shankara, where this one he said there's nothing beyond the Vedas, because Vedas are nishvasitam. They are the life breath of God Himself, is what is Mandana's argument. The Vedas have come out of the very nostrils of that supreme Brahman. What is the point in teaching of anything else? But Shankara's argument is you need to go beyond it. There is a reason why there is an anta to the Vedanta, and that is the realization of the supreme divinity within you, which is the same as the divinity that pervades the universe. And that is how the argument progresses till the time, it ends with Mandana Mishra accepting Shankara's.
Yeah, thank you for that. We have a question from Niranjanji who says, who was Sureshwaracharya?
Most accounts say that, Mandana Mishra himself became Sureshwaracharya. Yes.
And also Vijayji says, great details. Thank you for the talk.
Okay. Then one other thing, since there aren't any questions, I will add. Some people probably might ask, why did Kumarila Bhatta, torture himself? Got into that vice. And Shankara actually asked that question. Shankara is very, very curious. So he asked, such a great man, you've done so much. Why do you even want to? You can go into samadhi yourself. He says, no. Dharma says that every act of adharma cannot go without punishment. That's Kumarila's. Says there are two things that I have done which fall under the bracket of adharma. Point number one. When he wants to debate the Buddhists, he needs to know the Buddhist philosophy in totality. But Kumarila says during that time, the Buddhists were very wary of letting anybody from the other schools get into this. So Kumarila disguises himself as a Buddhist, enters into a Buddhist ashrama, falsely claims that he is a believer of Buddhism and learns everything. During one of those things, some of the disciples realized that this man is, in their eyes, a fraud. Right? So what they do is they start to persecute him. During the persecution, one of the things they do is to throw him off a mountain, off a hillock. And Kumarila falls down. While he's falling, while he's about to be pushed away, he says, one of the things he says, if the Vedas are true, then I shall survive this process. And he says, I committed the second adharma there. He says, by adding if, I doubted the veracity of the Vedas. I should have said nothing will happen to me because the Vedas are true. Because I said if the Vedas are true. So there are two acts of adharma that have come. One is by cheating my guru. I don't care even if he's a Buddhist, the guru should never have been cheated. I cheated him. One. Two, I questioned the veracity of the Vedas by adding that clause if. I should never have done that. And therefore I'm burning myself. So that is how dharma was seen in those days versus how we have seen it now.
So we have one more couple of questions. This is, how will you explain in a single way of these two great divine souls? Not sure what is the reference to.
Which two?
I'm not sure. He's not explained further. Anjanji, can you please tell between who are the two great divine souls you're talking about?
I think it must be Shankara and Mandana Mishra.
Okay. So assuming we take them as that single way of these two divine souls, can you please explain about that?
Actually, don't know. I don't think I even understand the question fully. How will explain a single way of this?
Shankara and Mandana Mishra. Yes.
Mandana Mishra.
Yes.
I mean, both were, Mandana Mishra, Kumarila Bhatta himself. Kumarila Bhatta was recognized as the greatest authority of the Vedas during this time. For Kumarila to say that Mandana Mishra has my disciple, Mandana Mishra was Kumarila's disciple. It says, for Kumarila to say that Mandana Mishra has surpassed me in the knowledge of the Vedas means that Mandana Mishra was the undisputed authority. And that is why Kumarila Bhatta says, your job is to draw Mandana Mishra into a debate and defeat him. That is how we have to see. The greatest exponent of the Vedas meets the greatest exponent of Vedanta.
How has Shankaracharya mentioned Lord Buddha directly in his work? Has Shankaracharya mentioned Lord Buddha directly in his works?
I don't think he directly mentions, though he just directly he does not mention Buddha himself, but definitely there are several pointers to who he is referring, and there are things on Buddhist and this philosophy of the Shunyata and all of those things that are mentioned. But I don't think, as far as I know, where he makes a direct mention of Buddha himself.
Okay.
Okay, where can one find reference to Ajapakshita Bhashyam? Ajapakshita Bhashyam, the reference you will find it in the Shankara Charitham, a series of discourses by the Kanchi Paramacharya in volume 5 of his Devatil Quran, which is also available as the voice of God. That's where you find the reference to the Ajapakshita.
I think that's all we have the questions. Thank you, Rameshji, for this wonderful explanation and details.
Okay, they're saying, thank you. Please share the website where we can read the chapters. I think it's available on Pragyat. That's the all chapters are available. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I didn't miss any of them. Thank you so much. So see you all again at 7 p.m. today evening. And the topic is again contextual meaning of word Dhyanam in Gita by Swamini Sadvidyanandaji. Thank you all.